Before we get to the details on the retake, I wanted to take a minute to go over a few of the frequently missed questions and to show you where the information was available to you this week. Google gives me this kind of report where I can see frequently missed questions. So this year, these were the top three missed questions, and in red are the number of students that got it correct. So for this one, which number is responsible for creating compounds that aren't proteins? 20 out of the 64 students who have taken it so far got it correct, which means that 44 students missed this question, which is concerning because of the places that it was available to you. So let's quickly go through these three questions, show you where the information was, and how we can then improve our quiz score. So let's look at this first one. You were asked on the quiz which number is responsible for creating compounds that aren't proteins. So in the lesson that I gave you, I had this slide, and you were able to take these notes and put them on your notes sheet. If we look over on the right, we can for the job and function column, I told you that the rough ER makes proteins, so we can't pick the rough ER for this question, but the smooth ER makes fats, which aren't proteins. And so if you took the notes on this part of the lesson and you wrote down on your notes sheet that the smooth ER makes fats, you would have that note available to you. So when you saw that question on the quiz, be like, oh, the smooth ER makes fats. That's not a protein. And so you would be able to pick the smooth ER on the question. Further, on the practice quiz, you were given this question. Which number is identifying an organelle that creates and transports cellular materials, particularly lipids? Now, if you didn't know what lipids were, you should know that they're at least know that it's not the word protein. So we're looking in this question for something that creates lipids, something that isn't proteins. And in the feedback that was given to you on the practice quiz, the second sentence, the smooth ER makes lipids, fats that are often used to make membranes, and the rough ER makes proteins. So, in a couple of different places, you were presented with the information that the smooth ER makes lipids or fats, and these are not proteins. So, on the actual quiz, this was your actual quiz question. Which number is responsible for creating compounds that aren't proteins? Well, it's number 12, the smooth ER. All the other structures make something that are proteins, okay? But we're looking for something that creates something other than proteins. Smooth ER, you were told a couple different times. All right, the next one. Which number is responsible for carrying? And notice that I put the word carrying in all caps from one part of the cell to another, or carrying something into or out of a cell. Now, this is alarming because only 12 people got this. In the lesson, for the Golgi apparatus, bottom right, you can see that I gave you the information that the Golgi apparatus ships vesicles around the cell or out of the cell. So if you took all of the notes that were available to you, you would have written down that vesicles carry stuff around the cell and carry stuff out of the cell. In the lesson, I showed you two different diagrams, but there we can see vesicles carrying stuff around and then eventually out of the cell. And here again, we can see vesicles carrying stuff from one part of the cell to another, and then over there on the right, a vesicle carrying something out of the cell. On your practice quiz, you were asked which number is identifying a membrane bound structure that carries something around, into, or out of a cell. And then on the feedback, you were given this vesicles, which carry stuff around in a cell. Okay, so you were given that information. On the actual quiz, which one is responsible for carrying stuff around the cell or carrying something into or out of the cell? We can see that number 11 is a vesicle that is leaving the cell. All right, the third one, which one is responsible for changing the shape of the cell? Now, in the lesson, I did mention that the cytoskeleton has the job of changing the shape of the cell. but we'll get to why that wasn't an option later. If we look at the bottom right, we can see that for plant cells, it can help the cells grow or shrink for the overall plant to move towards sunlight. So the vacuole can change the size and shape of the cell in order for the plant cell to actually kind of bend. On the practice quiz, this was your question. Which number is identifying the structure that the cell uses to support itself, or I'm sorry, and help itself change its shape? So if you read the feedback, look at this. You can actually look at the whole thing. Sometimes called microfilaments, these rods help the cell change shape. Imagine being able to rearrange your skeleton to change your body shape, which is something I said in the lesson as well. Plants, plant cells tend to not have or need cytoskeletons. So to change the shape, the vacuole will take in or remove water, which will change the shape of the cell. Then I gave you a second opportunity on the practice quiz. I had two pieces of feedback on the practice quiz. This one here is asking about the storage area for water, minerals, waste, or anything. And the answer was the central vacuole. And if we look at the last sentence, for plant cells, by taking in or removing water, the vacuole can change the shape of the cell. So you were told in the lesson and two places on the practice quiz that the vacuole changes the shape of the cell. So here's our actual quiz question: which of these is responsible for changing the shape of the cell? Now, a lot of students thought cytoskeleton, but plant cells don't have these very often. And in this diagram, there are no cytoskeletons. So it must be another organelle that can change the shape of the cell. And you were told twice on the practice quiz that this vacuole, number 3, can change this shape and size of the cell. All right. So for the retake on Friday, the retake will be on Friday. It is optional. You don't have to take it. If you got a 90 or a 100 or something like that and you're fine, you don't have to take this retake on Friday. And that means you're actually not going to have any quiz on Friday. It's optional and it can only help you. I will only take the better of your two scores. So if for some reason you do worse on the retake, then you just keep your original score. All right. The idea is that you're doing this to help your grade. I'm not going to lower your grade. All right. The diagrams will be different. I will choose different diagrams. It will be a true retake. Some questions will be the same, some will be different. I may ask you about some of the same organelles that were on the actual quiz, but there will be different diagrams. And for other questions, I will change which organelles I'm looking for. All right. So you have to know it all. I strongly suggest that you make sure that you have your notes sheet complete. Uh, go back to the lesson and make sure that anything that you left out is added to your note sheet. Read all the feedback on the practice quizzes. There's a practice quiz for this week and a practice quiz from last week. Read all the feedback, add the information to your notes. Okay. That notes sheet can have your feedback from the practice quizzes on it. All right. Make sure that your notes sheet is complete. If you need a new notes sheet, I will happily give you one. All right. If you have any other questions about the retake, you can go ahead and ask me, but only after you've watched this. And make sure that you're not asking me something that I've covered in this short lesson. All right. Good luck to you. Ask Mr. Bogdan questions as you got them. We want you to get a better score.